Hello, Happy New Year. I think this is the first video that's going to go out. I just wanted to have a quick intro for this video today. Recently, if you remember in the channel, maybe 1 or 2 months ago, I had an interview with Leong, the CEO and founder of Product Signals. He also did an interview for me and distributed that through his own channels, but he's going to chop it in smaller pieces. But I would like to share the whole big interview with you so you can go and check it out in this video. My voice is completely broken. Hopefully for the next one it's better. No COVID, but I still have been sick for several days now. No bueno, I don't recommend it. Take care of yourselves. I hope you feel better as well and you have a better start of the year than I'm having right now. Having said that, I will link all the information about Leong and his startup in the description down below. Hope you enjoyed the video and please leave any comments down below.
Hello, everyone. My guest today is Juan Rodriguez. He's a senior program manager at Utopia Music and the founder of Inside the Product, where he makes content around all things tech and product management. His main goal is to ease the learning curve for those in product by sharing his 18 years of product experience with others. Juan, thank you so much for jumping on. It's so good to have you.
Thank you for having me, Ivan. It's really good to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited to talk to you. You're actually the first product person I'm having on this little series. And so we have some definitely unique questions that are different than ones in the past. But I'd love to start and learn a little bit about how you got into product.
So I started my career as a software engineer. Actually, in the beginning, I was working more in automation and stuff like that. So working with things like machine vision and robotics. But then when I moved to Finland back in 2006, I started as a software engineer here. And when I was working as a software engineer, one of my team lead came at some point and asked me that if I wanted to help our users we had this kind of a online forum, kind of an old style, and they wanted somebody to help and give it support using our APIs that had been released with the product, so they could customize the product. And that's how I started to get in touch with users. So that got me really interested in understanding better what the users are trying to achieve, how we can help them, how can we maybe help them build or achieve their goals. And that was the thing that started to kind of get me interested. So I got to talk more with product managers that were in the company to understand better, like the customers, what they were trying to do. At some point, one of these teams or one of these product managers actually got promoted. So I went ahead and talked to him that, hey, who's going to take your role?
Yeah.
And that's how I talked my way into product management, basically, just being very interested in in helping the users, and also a little bit kind of networking internally in the company, and also getting more fascinated with this world of understanding the problems and trying to solve them.
I'm super curious, actually. So did your favorite part about being in product change the deeper you dove into it?
Yes. I think it's funny. Like in the beginning, I just didn't even know what product management was, or like by title, and it was a little bit like, okay, I just had to help the users, but not understanding really that, hey, okay, what are like the principles of product management? And I think that over time, there's things that I have appreciated more and more, and it's like, okay, things like, okay, how are you going to actually deliver the experience to your customers? How are you going to thinking more about like the customer journey? How are they going to discover your product? They are going to be able to consider it? So trying to be maybe more strategic, and also like that, I think that has been with the progress in the career, going from more like a product manager to a product director later on. That also has shifted my interest to maybe things to try to see the whole overall picture more than specifically try to tackle one specific problem.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. Speaking of, I'm super curious to get your thoughts on this. What do you think is going to change about the product manager role in the next 5 to 10 years, or what do you think is going to stay the same? And feel free to elaborate on the PM side of things, but also, as these PMs turn into directors or, VP of products, like, do you think anything's going to change on that end as well?
So I think that the PM role is going to change or at least I had this feeling that PMs had to be more analytical to be able to understand better what's going on and how their products are behaving. And I have been thinking that for me, I had the feeling that product managers are going to end up being more specialized maybe in their roles. And I think that you can see it already with growth PMs who are very, very specifically targeting, like, how can we improve the funnel? How can we get maybe more customers to sign in or get more customers to purchase? And I think that there's going to be more specialization within the different like PM kind of roles, because PM is just such a wide how to say career. It can do so many things that I had the feeling that there's going to be more specialization. I see that because especially for big companies, when you're in a smaller company, the direct conversation with a customer is priceless. Of course, it's priceless also in a big one. But when you start to have like millions of users, you have to be able to understand the data and patterns. And I see that this is going to be, or I had the feeling that there's going to be a mix between somehow like a data analyst and a product manager that is going to start raising more to be able to tackle those kind of situations for more like this. Okay, how we are able to work on these more like general issues, and how can we plan around them? Things that are going to stay. I said, in reality, as a product manager, you have like few things that you had to do. So first of all, you had to identify like this problem that is a common or big enough problem that you are going to find some kind of product market fit, and solve it in a way that the users want to stick with your product, that you are unique compared to other players out there. And then the thing is that, well, you also have to, especially if you are working in a for-profit company, you have to make sure that it's creating some kind of a impact in the business. So that's something that you have to really stick to it. And something that maybe is not so much talk is that you had to build a successful team. I think that that's something that is not something that is very commonly discussed in different places. And I think that being able to have a successful team and build or grow the team to be successful, I think that that's very important, because I mean, you being in a startup, I think that the success of a startup is the team. There's many other things around it, but if you don't get the team first, right team, most likely the startup is not going to have a very successful journey.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that for product managers also the same, like how product managers, product designers, tech leads, they had to be like in a way the leads of this squad, the product squad, and they had to be able to create like a good team dynamic. And I think that those are things that really had to stay to a certain degree.
That's super. I never thought about it that way. So do you have any I guess, like, are there any common denominators of great leadership product managers that tend to be good leaders? Are there any like common things you find within them that you look out for, and you can kind of see, oh, you know what, I think this PM is probably going to be a really good leader and kind of keep the team together and engaged and focused? Is there anything that kind of sticks out to you when you look for those sort of things?
Yeah, yes. So it's always difficult to find it, or not to find it. It's always difficult to identify it. Let's put it that way. Especially when you're interviewing for somebody to join, it's really hard. I think that for me, one of them is that the level of commitment, or how much are they part of the team. There are some PMs that just kind of like to work a little bit like an all-star manager, let's call it that way. That they just want to be able to say that, hey, this is what we have to do. I give you the specs, go deliver. And that's not how you're going to succeed. So PMs had to be very engaged and working together with the team, and also be able not just to write the things on their own. They also had to plan together with the rest. It's like you cannot work in isolation. You had to work with your designer. Hopefully, you have a designer. With your tech lead. It may be that you are a designer as a product manager. You never know. It depends on the size of your team. But you have to be able to have that conversation and get that input already in the very beginning. Get the team involved. And I think that when you are able to bring that commitment and trust from both sides is when you are able to identify those PMs that are going to be potentially really successful. I think that that's a very key aspect or skill to have.
I love that. I love that so much, and I think there's so much focus around just being in the space. So much focus around analytics and frameworks and principles, but like you said, not a whole lot talked about keeping the team together, engaged and focused. So I love that. Wow, gears are turning. Do you think PMs should be technical or have some sort of technical background, and does it help them in any way excel in the role?
Well, I'm going to be extremely biased in this one because I was a very technical PM starting. I think that it helps a lot. So I'm not going to say it's a must, but it helps a lot to be technical. In the end, many times when you are going to have these conversations with your product squad, they're going to be very technical conversations. And I don't know, understanding what kind of technology they're going to be using, if they're going to use, I don't know, when they're talking about Python or they're talking about AWS or they're talking about Kubernetes. It's good to have an understanding of what these things mean. Otherwise, you're going to zone out. When you zone out, usually you're not going to understand and get lost a little bit. I don't care about that. And it's not a good thing if you don't care about the discussions that your team is having. So I think it's good to be able to have that understanding. So for me, it's really beneficial, especially if you are PM for a tech company. Of course, you can be a PM, I guess, for company that's producing some kind of goods that are not very technical, then you probably don't need it at all. But from my experience, I think that I don't want to say it's a must, but it's going to help you a lot. And I think that in general, the PMs that I've seen that are more successful tend to have some kind of engineering background, or they have been very involved in trying to learn and trying to develop themselves. Maybe later on, that once they start working, it's like, well, I'm just going to try to do some prototypes here and there. And it helps them then having those conversations.
That's a great point, actually. I've noticed, at least with the PMs I've been around, that even if they aren't technical, their success is somewhat correlated with their willingness to lean into the technical aspects, and at least try to like understand or engage in it, and push their boundaries and understandings of it.
And I think that it's going to help also then with this team dynamics that we were talking earlier. If you are able to have that conversation, that kind of brings the trust also from the engineering side. Maybe not so much from the designing, I don't know, but from the engineering side, which is the biggest bulk of your team, definitely I think that if they see the effort, if they see that you understand their language, there's going to be a more trust. If you don't understand and you're just like, I don't care about this, just let's not talk about this, then that's a barrier that you're putting in front of your team. So I think that it's very important to, if you're not technical, trying to learn and adapt for that. I think that will be key for you to be able to success as a PM.
Yeah, I absolutely 100% agree. I'm curious. This is one of my favorite questions to ask product people. Do you have any like hot takes or unpopular opinions, like in product itself?
Yeah, I have probably a few. Like probably everybody has some.
Let's hear them. Yeah.
I would say first of all is this frameworks thing nowadays. It's like, and it's funny because I talk about frameworks every now and then in my channel. So frameworks are great to give you an understanding of maybe how to create a process. But people try to treat frameworks nowadays as science. And there's always like the new framework that is going to help you to solve everything. It's like, No,
Mm.
that doesn't exist. It's like principles, yes, that's the most important thing. But frameworks, they are just not truth, or they're not absolute truth, and they are going to work to a certain degree. And if there will be the perfect framework out there, every single product manager could create successful products. And well, we all know that doesn't happen,
Yeah,
even if you
yeah.
stick to the framework, really. So I think that that's something that that's one. Another one is that customers are not always right, and I know that sometimes this is one of the hard conversations sometimes to have with like customer success people or sales people. Is that customers might be right in pointing out a problem that is true, and you had to listen and understand that problem. But many times, and this is how we talk in general, like as people, not just customers, is that everybody just comes up with a solution. I need this. It's like, but the reality is that my solution or a customer solution doesn't tend to be necessarily the best solution. First of all, they're not product designers, or they're not expert in the field. So I think that is one that we tend sometimes to say that, well, customers are always right. Is that, well, not necessarily. Their problems can be always right, but as a product manager, I had to understand if this is a problem that it's aligned with my vision, if it's a problem that is general enough for my customer base to actually go and solve it. So that's one of those. And lastly, I would say one is that I although I used to like a lot this product owner title, yeah, I noticed that I don't want to see product owners and product managers in the same company. That's something that for me never works. I don't mind that to have as the title product owner or product manager. For me they are just potato, same thing.
Yeah.
Some people will disagree completely with me on that one. But I don't like when you have both a product owner and a product manager, because then there is this basically one ends up being a project manager for the product manager in a way. So one is the one that really is acting as a product manager. The other one ends up being just a project manager that is just managing tasks, adding them to the backlog, helping the team prioritizing based on what the product manager is saying. Is that, well, that's not a product owner anymore. That's not somebody is managing a product or owning a product. It's somebody just that is managing a backlog, basically. And I see that many times, and some people still like, yes, yes. And I don't know, it's a little bit like when Scrum started. I think that is still quite valid, but the fact that they added that title, everybody thought that that's a separate thing, but the product manager and the product owner can be the same, so they don't have to be different people.
That I love that. I never thought about it that way, and I think I just off the cuff, I tend to agree with that. And what's interesting is it almost makes me think that, and tell me what you think about this. It almost makes me think like if you actually do have the need for a product manager as defined as what we're used to, and somebody who's going to be a product owner that's sort of helping with the tasks, then you might have too big of a team or workload in that area, and then you should maybe split it up. Like maybe there's just too much there. What do you think?
I agree. I think that for me, that's a sign that either there is a little bit maybe old school company that wants to have like a very hierarchical, how's it called? I don't even know how to
Like
call
just
it.
like a
Hierarchy?
structure, yeah, hierarchy,
Structure.
yeah.
but instead of having and in those cases, sometimes even the PMs belong like to a business unit in a way. I would say that for me, that's a sign that probably the team is very big, and probably also that the PM is very kind of disengaged from the team. That is working in a kind of in a separate bubble. The PM only talks with the PO, then the PO is the one that goes and delivers. And that's for me, that's not a good thing. I think that for me, if you need somebody that takes more like those senior roles, then you have like senior PMs, principal PMs that can be working with maybe several teams and try to align in, okay, what is the strategy for the product? So if you have a big product, I don't know, whatever, Facebook. Obviously, you're going to have tons of PMs, and then you had to have different levels of PMs. That, hey, this PM looks more into the chat, and it's a principal PM that it's kind of working them maybe with 20 PMs under them, and working then, okay, what is going to be in the future, how we're going to improve it, how we're going to take it to mobile, blah blah blah, whatever it is. So yeah, I think that there has to be a little bit that hierarchy that you help in enabling this, like, okay, who builds the strategy, or how the team builds the strategy, and then how do you divide the different sides of the product. So the people that owns that side of the product, they can really own it, they can really drive it, and they can bring their views on, hey, what should be the strategy, how we mix and merge with the overall strategy for the product.
Got it. I love that. Um, I'm curious to get your take on what makes a good product manager become a great one, in the sense that I think that product is definitely a different beast of a career path, and I'm curious to get your thoughts as to how does one get into the role and then go from, learning and providing value to the users, and then like doing that as, how they say 10x engineer. Like, what does the 10x product manager look like?
So I think that, well, one of the problems with product management is just that there's not like a direct career path. There's no like you study this and you're gonna be a PM.
Yeah.
So like you study computer science, then you can be a software engineer. I don't think there is anything, at least yet, for product managers. There are courses and different trainings that they are given, but there's not like a university degree that you can go and then it's like, this is an obvious path to be a product manager. Sometimes they say MBA. I don't tend to agree that MBA is the best path for product management. Kind of maybe would agree more with something like computer science, but that's maybe my own bias there. But I think that in order to be this 10x PM, I think that there's like different things that you had to look into. The first one is this: understand very well like the principles of product management. I think that what I talked earlier, you have to be able to understand that how to identify problems that are big enough that affect to a large part of your customer base or your potential customer base in the future. How are you going to be able to monetize this problem? How can you use all the data that you have available? How can you identify with all the metrics that is this a real problem or not? How we can look into market research that are going to help us doing that investigation. And I think that's something that it's overlooked, maybe something that is very promoted is that this concept of MVP. And MVP for me can be many things. It's true that many times people talk about MVP as your first actual product, but for me, MVP can also be validation of the problem. How you can actually validate your problem with your users. How can you make sure that this is an actual problem that you have? How can we validate that the solution that we are thinking about is a viable solution with the customers, even before we start building it? So I think that time is spent maybe on discovery and very quick validation is often overlooked. Sometimes companies either tend to do massive research that takes forever to get to that first version of the product, and sometimes they just go too quickly. And it's like we get some feedback that this is a problem that customers have, and we go ahead and start trying to fix it. I think that those are big problems. And then also understanding that what, for example, an MVP is. An MVP doesn't mean that you deliver something that is not usable and is completely, like a really, really bad thing. Is that, but it's not obviously a finished product. And that's something that people have real problems to wrap their heads around. It's like, so what is that minimum functionality? And it's not just functionality, it's also the design and the usability of it that you had to deliver for your customers, so you are able to validate this first step instead of trying to build the perfect product. I think that Tesla did a great approach with this one. With the first, let's just think about the Roadster. It was not even technically or designed as an EV. It was just, I think it was a Lotus. I don't know which model that they just re-engineer, put the electric motors and sell it as such. So that's a very good example of MVP. And then another MVP is like the first versions of the Tesla Model S, where many things probably were not working or as smooth as you would hope. So maybe quality assurance was not there. Everybody was talking about the panel gaps in the model in those cars at the beginning with the Model 3. It's like, well, quality assurance, they were probably caring about the safety, but not the visuals. And that's something that, well, you can overlook those ones in the beginning and improve like the quality of the interior design later on. You don't have to have it perfect. It still gives you the picture of what it's going to be, and you understand the value very well, and it already attracts a lot of people. And then from there, you iterate and you improve by having like this also over the air software updates, and every now and then tweaking whatever materials, better engineering to have less panel gaps and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. No, that makes a ton of sense. I love that. The next question I have for you, I'm super excited to ask, because I've asked tons of go-to-market people this question. So CS and sales, and you're the first product person I'm asking this to. But if you could have customer success and sales understand one thing about the product world, what would it be and why?
So I think that this is something that I haven't done like in previous companies. I think that I would try to do is go and explain what product management is. Do it like as a presentation to everybody, just so people try to understand what is the journey and what is the thought process. So people would understand the why are we doing the things that we are doing and how we are doing it. So try to explain our ways of working, so there could be an understanding of what we are doing and why we are doing it. So they can understand that we cannot solve every single customer case that comes. Because I remember when I was working as a support engineer, you get a ton of requests and bugs and things from customers for that API. And then it's like, well, the reality is that engineers have a ton of different projects that are working on, and bandwidth is relatively small, and not everything can be tackled. And yes, you don't want a product that has problems, but the reality is that every product is going to have some kind of bug somewhere hidden. So you have to be able to critically prioritize the ones that are not disrupting the journey of most of your users. So that, I think, is something that is very important for a PM to be able to establish, if ideally with things like continuous now I forgot how it's called, but basically that you are making sure that you have automated tests for like the typical workflows of a user. So if your typical user is usually doing these things, you have to try to automate that testing, that whenever somebody merges something in the code, it doesn't break. So that's something that is very important. I think that another thing that is important for them, for customer success people and sales people to understand, is that, as I said earlier, customers are not always right. The solutions are rarely right. What the problems usually are real. And that's something that we have to understand, see how we can have an impact on them. And understand that not every time that a customer has a problem is a problem that is affecting all the other customers in the company. It might be affecting me because, for example, when I was doing that support, if some customer comes with a bug that is in the product, it's like, but maybe that bug in the API, it was only affecting that customer. And you have hundreds, thousands, potentially millions of customers. If you can only identify one customer with that problem, and you cannot see that problem is going to affect others in the future, the sad reality is that you had to deprioritize this one. You cannot go and fix everything. Right. So this is something that they had to understand, that you cannot go and help everybody because you don't have the bandwidth. If you do that, basically you're you're just trying to fix your product to perfection, and your product is going to be taken over at some point by some other competitor, because they're going to be able to move much faster, because they're not going to care about these things. So you had to have this balance, and this is something that sometimes, and I understand very well, having been there, is that sometimes if you're a customer success person and you have your customers calling you that, hey, I need to fix this, that's something that, um, yeah, that you cannot answer to all of them. So I think that they had to understand that from a point of view of a PM, you had to be strategic as a PM, that you want to create value for most of your customers. That is your goal.
Yeah. No, absolutely 100%. And then on the flip side, what do you think product on average or in general uh should understand about the go-to-market side, so customer success and sales and their world?
Well, first of all, they should understand go-to-market, like the four piece of product marketing mix, or whatever it's called, four piece of marketing mix, maybe is product
Yeah.
placement, pricing, and promotion. And then you had to understand customer journey. So how are people going to discover your product? How they are going to consider your product? How they're going to purchase it? How you're going to support it? And how you're going to kind of create loyalty. I think that those are things that PMs are not very often interested in. Sometimes there is too much the focus on the problem and fixing that problem. But it's like, okay, how we are going to help customers identify or find out that we can now fix this problem. How we are going to help them maybe consider it. How we are going to help like purchase. So I think that that's something that the PMs maybe don't pay that much attention. And those are things that potentially marketing maybe more than sales or customer success can bring into the table. I think that from a PM, something that you need to understand, especially when you think about when we are going to plan a quarter or we are going to plan a year. I need to understand the sales strategy. And there's many different sales teams. There are sales teams that just kind of shoot from the hip. So it's difficult to understand the strategy.
Yeah.
And then there's teams that have a clear strategy of, okay, during this year, we are going to move into these new market areas. It can be a new country or something like that, or it might be a new industry. And you have to understand like the priorities of these ones, because then that's going to help you prioritize the work that you want to do. So let's say that you are, I don't know, in going back to the electric vehicle. So you are a company that you have been just having your old ICE vehicles, and now you want to start building electric vehicles. So you had to understand that that shift of the strategy has changed. So I had to be able to start prioritizing. So those are the things that I think that from the sales point of view, you had to get that input. And in all honesty, that's something that I rarely see, and maybe that's something that both teams generally are failing in most of the companies, to share their strategies and to make the gears click, and then the whole machine actually starts working properly.
That's incredible. That's a great point. And like the more that I think about it, is especially in the roles that I've been in, um, the strategies, we're often closed off from each other's strategies. And I think you make a great point about having, sometimes you kind of have to seek it out, because it might get lost in the in the sound waves. Everybody's in their own world with their own objectives. And so something that I'm actually going to take away from this conversation is for those organizations, I keep that in the back of my pocket, is like constantly reach out and like understand the strategy, because I think it does play a huge role into what you are doing, but the stuff you might get bombarded with, quarters down the road. So that makes a ton of sense.
And I think that even applies to your customer, if you are able to that they are sharing their strategies, and if different customers share their strategy, you can see the commonalities, and that's something that can help you as a product manager also to start prioritizing. that
Yeah.
hey, our customers are trying to achieve these goals. It's like, how can we help them achieve these goals? Is this aligned with our vision or not? That's kind of the first question. But then after that is like, okay, so if it's aligned with our vision, how can we actually look into them, and is something that we can do it in a timely manner that is not going to take us 10 years and so on.
Yeah, totally. I love that. Last question for you. If you could give one piece of advice to someone breaking into product, what would it be?
The first one is always learn, always be able or be willing to learn new things. Is I don't even when you are starting, of course, at that moment you want to learn more, but very soon it kind of tapers down, and people don't necessarily care too much about learning. So I think that learning and understanding better how to do your job, there's always new things that you can learn. I, for example, was reading recently a book called Negotiation Genius, that you could argue that why you as a product person want to learn about that, but there's many negotiations that in many ways you had to have, like talking with customer success or sales might be in a way a negotiation. It's like, hey, this is how we're going to do it. What is your input? How can we create value to both parties, so both parties end up the discussion in a good place? So I think that the willing of learning and even going out of your comfort zone, that's something that you had to have always in the back of your mind from the very beginning to whenever you finish your career or you move to the next position. Then I would say that I know that I've been saying this several times, but sticking to the principles of product management, that's very important to understand that you are there to solve problems of customers that are general problems that are going to affect a large amount of your customers, that are going to able to generate revenue. So you actually are able to move on towards your vision, not just creating revenue for the sake of creating revenue, but also for the achieving your goals as a company, how we are going to become the best product out there, how we are going to be able to change the world to be a better place for whatever reason it is, which is a kind of a cheesy way of saying things that many times product people love to say, but in reality, you are wanting to help customers or users to have a better experience or improve their ways of doing things in certain ways. So in the end, you are making their lives ever so slightly better. And that's an important thing. And then I would say that as a PM, and especially as a new PM, it's important that you learn to say no and how to say no. You don't have to say no to everything, obviously, but you have to be able to say no to things. And no doesn't mean that it's no, but it might be that you have to explain why. For example, if you are a company that is doing electric vehicles and there's a huge opportunity to do ICE vehicles, it's probably not a very great idea. Even if the potential is great, it's like, that's not your vision. So somebody else is doing it. Go to those manufacturers, they are great. If you're interested for that, these manufacturers you could go and contact, they're great, they're going to do a good job, but our focus is in this area. And I think that customers will respect you a lot if you are able to say that sorry, this is not our focus, because we focus on whatever it is, and we don't do that. I think that Grammarly, for example, is a good example. If you know Grammarly, it's like Grammarly, they just want to help people that are writing in the place where they are writing. So they're not trying to create like their own new editor or anything like that. And I think that that's very important, that they are there. And if somebody comes out, hey, you could create an editor, well, hopefully they have. I'm not wrong about this, but as far as I know, they don't have an editor, and that kind of would be going out of their value proposition. And it's like, no, we just integrate with all these ones. We play with everybody. We don't want to compete. If you want, you can just go to Word or Google Docs or whichever. And I think that that's something that builds trust also in customers, that they understand that, hey, okay, it's good to know that you're not going to do it. I had to find an alternative. promises, and especially this is something that I would say product managers, salespeople, customer success people have done very often, is promising that something is going to be done. And even if it's in the backlog and even trying to actively fix it, it might never get done. And that's probably one of the most frustrating things for a customer. It's like when you hear about this new product that is going to be awesome, that Apple is going to release, and it's like, it never came. What happened to it?
Yeah.
It's very frustrating. So these kind of situations you want to avoid as much as possible. So don't promise things that you don't even know if you can deliver.
Yeah. I definitely guilty of that. That was probably the biggest thing I had to overcome going into products. I'm so glad you brought that up. Because it's one of those things where I don't want to say no to somebody because I sympathize or empathize with them. And of course, CS is very attuned to those sorts of things. So that's amazing advice.
I'm
awesome.
pretty sure I'm guilty of all of them. At some point or
I'm still
another.
working on it. Yeah. Well, this has been a ton of fun, Juan. If people want to find you, where can they get in touch?
So they can find me in YouTube. So I run a channel called Inside the Product. And in this channel, I talk about generally product management, but also like the whole product creation process or product development process. I talk about it. So very focused on tech companies, obviously. And then if you want to reach out and contact me, you can find me also in LinkedIn. Maybe we can put the link in the
I'll drop the links. Yeah. Awesome. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for jumping on. Appreciate it and look forward to the next time we chat.
Yeah, thank you very much. Same here.
Yeah.
So that was the interview with Evan. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I really had a blast. It was so interesting to talk with him. It's always really nice, the conversations that we have, and I like to have these interviews and discussions about the points of view of where do you think that product management is going to go in the future, how product people see others, how others see product people. And that's also something that probably I would like to touch more during this year on this channel. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, share it, and subscribe to the channel. It helps massively with the YouTube algorithm and for YouTube to spread this video to other people that might be interested on it. I will see you in the next one, and remember, stay safe.